Every week we do another chapter. This coming week, the Sabbath will be chapter 5, which means we're 2 weeks away from the holiday of Shavuos. Because as we've discussed, there's 6 weeks, 6 Shabbosim, 6 Sabbaths between Passover and Shavuos, a chapter a week. This week is 5. The next week is going to be 6. And the next week is going to be the holiday of Shavuos. All right. So let us look in chapter 5. And I'm going to go to the 10th statement in chapter 5. So the 10th statement says, there are 4 character types among people. He who says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. That's an ignoramus. He who says, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. This is a medium person, but some say this is like the people of Sodom, who were known to be very, very, very wicked. He who says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. This is a very pious, benevolent person. And he who says, what's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine, of course, is a wicked person. So the sages here are describing 4 people. And how are we describing them in terms of how they interact with others? Meaning when we look at people and we see how they are with others, with their possessions, it's a bit of an indication what type of people they are. As perhaps we've seen in our reality, that sometimes when you see how people are in terms of generous, giving, sharing, or not, it could really be an indication of a lot of things about that person. So the sages describe 4 types of people. So the first person says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Do you remember? I just read it for you. How did the sages describe such a person? What did they say? He's a what? This is not a test if you were listening very, very, very carefully. They said,
Ignoramus?
Ignoramus. Yeah, Mary was listening very carefully. He's an ignoramus. What point are the sages making about human nature when they say someone who says, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, he's an ignoramus? Why are the sages saying that? Doesn't sound so bad. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine.
You cannot make an assumption about how somebody else feels about their possessions.
Okay, so what Carol is saying is, why is he an ignoramus? Because he's making an assumption that how I treat you is how you want to treat me, or how I treat you is how you're going to treat me. So if I say, hey, I'm freely giving to you, and hey, you're freely going to give to me, well, that's like what's called a foolish person, because who says the other person wants to be generous because you want to be generous? That's a very smart point, Carol's saying. Any other thoughts on why the sages would view this person as not a bad person, but like an ignorant person?
Well, he's not aware of people around him and how they behave also, which would make him ignorant.
Could be. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Why is it ignoramus to say what's mine is yours and what yours? What does this sound like? And what are the sages commenting about this? What does it sound like when someone says what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine? What type of socio-system does it sound like?
Like you can just take what you want because that's yours and he can take from you.
Yeah, but why do the sages saying it's ignorant? What sociological...
Sounds like something an immature person would say.
So why? Why does it sound like immature? So Kim is saying it sounds selfish. I think she's going like in the same direction as Carol in terms of like almost like making an assumption that I can freely take. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours. You can freely take from me, and I can freely take from you. Like, and who says the other person wants this relationship, and who says it will be a fair relationship if you take whatever you want from me? Who says if I want anything from you, but you might want a lot of things from me? Any other obvious problems with it?
To me, it kind of sounds along the socialist kind of thought train. And it kind of makes me think that like we each have a puzzle piece as far as what we're trying to do in the world and how we're trying to contribute to society. And if I'm assuming that I can just use your things and possessions and resources, and likewise, it might invalidate that person's purpose and what they're trying to do.
That's what I was thinking. I don't know if I developed it as extensively as Aaron did, But definitely to me, it sounded like socialism. You know, socialism, communism is a branch, of course, of socialism, of this idea of like, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. It's such a wonderful thought. And our sages are saying, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Even in Israel, they had a model of socialism, which was the kibbutz, right? It wasn't a harsh dictatorship. It wasn't. It was really pure socialism. It doesn't work.
The Pilgrims tried it. It didn't work then either.
Pilgrims tried it then either. Okay. So if the Pilgrims tried it, didn't work then. It doesn't work because man has a certain drive to succeed, to accomplish, to climb the ladder. And if you're saying, hey, there is no ladder to climb, it's mine, it's yours, what's yours, it's mine. We're all going to share, and it's all going to be all of us together. You're just not understanding human nature. Human nature doesn't work that way. So either it will be a very non-functioning society, or it will not be. And then as everyone officially is all equally sharing, some are going to be grabbing bigger pieces than others, AKA like Animal Farm, like it just isn't going to work. So our sages are saying, and this is very interesting because, of course, they said this a long time before any of these theories were developed in that fashion, but they're just saying it's ignorant because you're envisioning man in a way that he's not. He's not wired that way. He's not going to work that way. So, of course, I think what Carol said was also very true, because if someone says, hey, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, like, and who says the other party is on board? But I think the sages are saying even more than that, that even if the other party was on board, and even if people say, oh, this is a wonderful way to live, our sages are saying, no, it doesn't work. I like how Aaron said it, more developed, more eloquently about how really maybe disturbing people's missions, and also just very pragmatically, the way we're wired is achievement. And we literally do look at the competition, and that does move us forward, make us move faster, make us climb more. That's how humans work. And trying to like denature humans and say, oh no, we're different, we're all going to freely share, our sage says it's ignorant. It's not a society that's sustainable. So that was their first concept. The second concept is someone says, what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. And they gave two perspectives on this person. Do you remember what I read you? What are the two perspectives?
I think you said they were a medium person.
A medium person, like a medium person, like, okay, not high and not low. Like, okay, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. We're going to respect each other's boundaries. That was the first way the sages said, but they said, but some say this is a characteristic of the people of Sodom. So Sodom and Amorah, if you remember, biblically, were very, very wicked cultures in the time of Abraham. There were 5 cities, actually, that were destroyed because they were such wicked, horrible people. And
they had no compassion.
They had no compassion.
No charity.
They had no charity. They outlawed charity. If you were charitable, it was a crime. So yes, they had no compassion. They had no charity. They were very, very mean and cruel, especially to foreigners, to strangers. They had all these things they did to harm people that weren't from our group. But even from our group, if we say, what's mine, what's yours, yours. Like, that works, right? We have boundaries. I'm not taking yours. You're not taking mine. I'm taking yours. We're not being so silly to think we're all going to share. Some of our sages say, no, this is like a Sodom-like trait. Meaning our sages are saying, no, that's not how we want society to be. You could say, well, it's okay. We're not taking your possessions. But the sages are saying, well, good sense. Okay. But then the other sages say, no, you can't say it's okay. It's like the characteristics of Sodom, which, of course, as Carol said, were known to be cruel and vicious and uncharitable. Literally, they outlawed charity. Literally, if you gave charity, it was a crime. And it was a crime that they literally killed people for. Like, we don't want any compassion. We don't want any charity in our midst. We, like each man for themselves. What's mine's mine. What's yours, yours. And our sages say, no, that's not how society's supposed to be. That part of a regular normative society should be giving to other people. Not necessarily like the ignorant person of saying, here, we're all freely sharing. Like, that's not going to work. But the other idea of like, just, I take care of me, you take care of you. So you're just saying, no, that's not a good society either. That's not how God wants society to be. We're supposed to have compassion. We're supposed to share. Again, that doesn't mean necessarily saying everything of mine is yours, but on a certain level, to be generous, to be giving, to be sharing, to be compassionate, to try to help other people, even though they're not your people. That's how God wants society to be. And obviously, as a Noahide, that's something that's very important in the composition of a Noahide, is creating a compassionate, charity-driven society. Each one by your own example, ripple effect, to create a world of kindness, of goodness, of sharing. Again, not in the way that, say, just in the previous example, which, like we're saying, socialism, like, doesn't work, but in a way of like, I don't have to just, it's mine and you're not me, so I'm not giving you. No, like, just to feel safe and appropriate to give. And that's not a weakness, that's a strength. That's a way of creating a good society. Then the sages gave the two ends of the pole, if this is the median or Sodom-like trait, which is the very righteous person and the very wicked person. So the very righteous person said, what's yours is yours, but what's mine is also yours. So that's not considered foolish. That's considered very righteous. He's not thinking we're creating a society where everyone is freely sharing everything. Like, that's not going to work. But he is saying, I want to freely share mine. So I'm not just going to be like a nice person that's also gives some to charity. No, I want to freely share whatever I have. I want to give to another person. I'm not expecting that back. I'm not assuming it's going to happen back. I understand human nature. It's not going to happen back. But I would like to freely share what I have. That's a very righteous person. And of course, the wicked person at the other polar extreme was like, what's yours is mine. What's mine is mine. But what's yours is mine also. In the very aggressive bully, biggest boy on the playground that's going to take everything style. So it's just interesting how sages are telling us in a few words, like a lot of deep perspectives on what works and what doesn't work, and really how we should be. Have you seen in your life this movement of like any of these like voices, so to speak, around you, or how you move from one to another? Have you seen this progression?
I only see it illustrated in the news of the people that I am surrounded by. I do not,
Okay.
fortunately.
Anyone does? Anyone sees any of these? No? All right. So let's go on to the 12th Mishnah. That was the 10th statement. Now we're going to the 12th. The 12th said there are 4 types of students: quick to grasp and quick to forget. His advantage is canceled by his disadvantage. Hard to grasp and hard to forget. What do you think the sages are going to say about that person who's hard to grasp but hard to forget? How do you think they're going to define that person? They say his disadvantage is canceled by his advantage. Quick to grasp, hard to forget. Oh, that's a good portion. And hard to grasp and quick to forget, that's a bad portion. So the sages here are not looking now at personalities or character traits. They're looking at intellectual abilities of students. And when they're saying there's really 2 different types of advantages in thought. If you think about what helps one, what are the qualities you need to be a student? So one is your grasp of understanding. And the other one they're focusing on is your retention. And they're saying these are 2 very different qualities of the brain. And as a teacher, I agree. I mean, I know they're right, but I see this so strongly in students that there's the ability to quickly get it, to understand it. And then I'm actually going to say even more than retention. Retention is to me a piece of, I'll call it work ethic. Like sometimes I would see as a teacher, because I would teach in high school, and I would see bright kids coming into 9th grade. And when it got hard, because of course 9th grade, high school is far more challenging than elementary school. And like these bright kids could fall apart because they were never really challenged in elementary school. They never really had to work hard. So they never developed thinking abilities, how to deal with something that's like bigger than your brain or bigger than your ability to remember, or like, how do I chunk it down? How do I retain it? How do I review it? And other students that were weaker in terms of the grasp, but because of that, over their years, they had developed skills in retention and other things. And sometimes I would encourage students that maybe weren't the fastest, but you've got such great work ethic. You're so good in all the work of learning, and that's going to carry you far. And I have seen students that carry them very, very, very far. So the sages are saying, they look at it like a blessing. You know, the gift of your mind. Did someone give you a mind that you get it fast? Wow, that's great. Someone give you a mind that you retain it? Oh, that's great. But what if you have these combinations, like someone who gets it fast, but loses it fast? They say, it's not so good. I mean, you got it fast, but then you don't remember it. That's not so good. Someone else who takes him a while till he understands it, but then he really has it. Oh, that's worth it. Like, even though, it takes me a while till I get it, but then you really get it. That's actually a better portion. That's a better ability, long-term thinking. And boy, some people get both. They quickly assimilate, quickly retain. Wow. And some people have a hard time learning. And once they learn, they have a hard time retaining it. And Sage says that's hard. But we believe that the mind is a muscle. You know, in Jewish thought, learning is very, very, very important. It's very important to learn because, of course, we have a foundational connection to God through studying his Torah. So really, as part of our society for all the generations, there was a tremendous, tremendous emphasis on learning. And of course, it's not a person's fault if they have a weak grasp, they have a weak retention. I mean, this is, they got this gift, they didn't get this gift. But the sages believe that the mind is a muscle, which means the more you work it, the better it gets. So even this fourth category, don't get it fast. And if you get it, they could forget it so fast. Sages say, and you know what? You also have an obligation to study Torah. You also have an obligation to learn. It's going to be harder for you, but keep working your mind. Your mind is a muscle. You will get better and better and better at it. They say, this isn't thousands of years ago. This was probably the early 1900s when they started the yeshiva, the rabbinical school in Lubavitch. This is in Russia. And there were two, well, it's a long story. I'm going to just briefly bring out this point. There was a boy there who was really, as we would call today, slow. He really was not a very good learner. He was really sincere. And he'd come really early and he'd spend hours learning and he'd leave very late and he got very little. He just did not have a very good mind for learning. And everyone sort of felt like, whatever, Nebuch, as we would say. Like, you feel bad for him because poor guy, he's trying, but like, he's obviously not going to make it, not cut out to be a learner. But he kept working at it and working at it and working at it. And they say about him that eventually became a teacher in this rabbinical school. And he would give classes that were so amazing, classes in Talmud, that all the people, even the people that were not part of the Chabad movement and didn't attend this school, they would come to hear his classes. And this is just brought as an example that we really believe that, yes, God gives some people gifts and you quickly learn. God gives some people gifts. You quickly remember. God gives some people gifts. You got both advantages. And for some people, God says, I don't want you to learn. I want you to work. I want you to work. But if you work, you can also attain. In the next Mishnah 13, there are 4 types among those who give charity. So now we're looking at people, like their own personalities, and how this plays out, how we see it in an act of giving charity. Okay, well, charity, that's a good act. So let's see what the sages are going to say. One who wishes to give, but that others should not give. He wants to give charity and he doesn't want else to give charity. He begrudges others. Or Others say others should give and he should not. He begrudges himself. Others that he should give and others should give. That's a righteous person. And of course, the wicked person is that he should not give and others should not give either. That's a wicked person. But let's look at this a little bit, especially the first two, that some people want to give charity, but they don't want other people to give charity. They want to be the ones giving charity. What do you think is motivating these people? They want to give charity, but they don't want anyone else to give charity.
Ego and acknowledgement.
Ego, acknowledgement. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
I agree with Carol.
You agree with Carol. Ego. Ego. They want all the credit. They want all the fame. Very interesting, because charity is the idea of helping someone else. Like we were speaking before about the people of Sodom who were not and outlawed it. Charity means being kind, beneficent, being sensitive to unfortunate. So our sages are pointing out that even something that's as good as charity, right? Charity is a beautiful thing, but even in charity, Carol used the word ego. Okay, I'll follow her word. Ego could still creep in. We could look at ourselves and we say, oh, I would never be like that. Okay, fine. I trust not. But the thought is very interesting that we could be doing something good. And within the good we're doing, some of our not so good could be coming along for the ride, right? Like this person's doing something very good. Charity is a very good thing. And for Noahide, it's an amazing thing. It's one of the strongest ways a Noahide serves God is through charity. So it's a very, very important thing. And we want everyone to give charity. And if they give charity with bad intentions, we're still glad they're giving charity. But in these words, they're really giving a warning. Like, watch out. Even if you're good, your bad could be there. So does that mean I shouldn't give charity? No. Still keep giving the charity. But be honest with yourself. Be honest and keep your eyes open to see what type of person you really are. Because maybe inside you're good. There might be, Carol said, ego. She said acknowledgement, meaning wanting the fame, wanting the honor, wanting the prestige. Maybe something to think about, to noticing yourself. And sometimes we are honest with ourselves and we do see this, that I'm doing good things, but maybe all my motivations aren't so pure. Does that mean I stop the good things I'm doing until I fix up my motivations? No, keep doing the good. It's like someone once complained to a Hasidic Rebbe of, whatever, something belongs on how he gave charity and how it wasn't so pure. The Rebbe said, okay, but for the hungry person, he's still fed.
Mm-hmm.
So even if what we're doing is not so pure, yes, we want to keep doing it because the hungry person's still fed, because it's still helping. But at the same time, we want to be honest with ourselves. We want to look at ourselves and understand that as I continue to do the good, and here we're saying charity, which is a wonderful example of the good, I should also work on my inner reality as well. Then we give this other example of this person who says, oh, charity is a great thing for everyone else to do. Me, I wouldn't do it, which I don't think is really relevant in this group, but meaning like the ideal I believe in, but it doesn't mean I want to do the ideal, which sort of could go into the whole concept of hypocrisy, how people talk versus how people behave. There's a famous story with Aristotle that he was once teaching his students about some behavior that was very inappropriate, very repulsive. And then he went off. I don't know, I guess it was lunchtime or something. And he left the class and his students started debating this issue and they had a question and they literally went to find him. They were so into it. And they saw him doing exactly what he had just taught them was inappropriate, was wrong. And they were like, oh, and this is what he literally just taught us was wrong. We were discussing the nuances of it and he's doing exactly that thing. And they said to him, like our master, our teacher, Aristotle, what's going on? And he said, oh, then in the study hall, I was Aristotle the philosopher. Now I'm Aristotle the man. So Aristotle the man can act very differently than Aristotle the philosopher is teaching. So that's like the person that says charity is a wonderful thing, but not that I would give it, but you should give it. It's a very good idea. And again, I don't think that necessarily that's our issue. The first one might be a little more something we need to work on. But sometimes catching ourselves in terms of this, like, is there a difference between my value system and my behaviors, right? The person that's saying charity is wonderful. You should give charity. I don't give charity, but you should give charity. It's a very good idea. Has obviously a very broad discrepancy between his values and his behaviors. So I'm sure by us, it'll be a lot more subtle than that. But that would really be the question that's being expressed here. Do we also sometimes have a discrepancy between our beliefs and our behaviors? And then the third and the fourth were very simple. The person who gives and wants everyone to give, obviously that is how we're supposed to be. And then conversely, the wicked person who doesn't give, and actually he doesn't want anyone else to give. But you could say, what does he care? But if someone is truly an evil person, they don't want goodness in the world, even on your calculation. And actually they do care. So all of those things I thought really you could think about in terms of yourself, especially the first two. Hopefully we're all like the third person. And maybe in the realm of charity, we're all like the third person. We give and we want others to give. But maybe the other things, thinking of the first person who gives and doesn't want others to give, like sort of reflecting on ourselves. Is there places where my goodness is co-joined with maybe some other not as nice parts of me that I hope nobody notices? And the second person who wants others to give, but he doesn't want to give, do I also on some level have this discrepancy between my belief system and my behaviors? That was the 13th. The 14th, there are 4 types among those who attend the house of study. Those, again, as we said, studying Torah is a very, very great virtue. Among those who study, 4 types. One who attends but does not engage, meaning he goes to the study hall, but he doesn't actually study. Well, he gets reward for going, but not for studying. One who engages but doesn't intend, meaning he doesn't go to the study hall, but at home he sits and studies. Well, he gets the reward for studying, but not for going because he doesn't go. One who attends and engages, meaning he goes to the study hall and he studies, that's the righteous person. And one who doesn't go and doesn't study, well, obviously that's the wicked person. The first 2 are interesting in terms of how the sages are looking at human behavior, that we can have people who are saying, oh, studying is a really important, wonderful thing. And they go to the study hall, but they never actually study in the study hall. I know a lot of people like this. Most of my children are like this. This is very familiar to me, very intimately familiar, that they will go, but they don't actually crack down and study, but they go. So you could say, oh, that's worthless. I mean, they're going to the study hall and they're not studying anyway. That's so pointless. But that's not how the sages look at it. The sages say, well, they get the reward for going, though obviously not for learning because they're not learning. Why do you think that's so? I mean, the point is to learn, and they are not learning. So why do you think the sages are saying there's a reward, meaning God appreciates that they're going, even though they don't learn? Any thoughts on that? Why would God appreciate that? Sabra.
It's a good habit. And eventually it may pay off.
That's very nice. That's very reassuring. I should mention that. Maybe it's a good habit.
Yeah, because you're going to do something you really don't want to do, but you do it anyway, and it rubs off on you eventually.
Yes, that is what Sabra's saying. Sabra's saying it's a good habit.
Mm-hmm.
A good habit meaning, I like the way Sabra phrased it, it's a good habit meaning sometimes we are pushing ourselves past our pay grade or what we think is past our pay grade. Or like Carol was saying, you don't want to do it. You don't like to sit and learn. It's difficult for you. It's hard. Maybe you think it's boring. You're not into learning. So at least you're getting yourself to go. And what Carol and Sabra are both saying is hopefully, eventually, as you keep putting yourself in the right place, you might crack open a book or 2 and actually start learning. Any other thoughts on why God would think this is a good idea? Why would, again, the sages are saying, they're saying something very interesting. You're walking to the study hall. You're not studying in the study hall. You're drinking coffee. You're quietly talking with somebody else who's also not studying. And the sages say, well, they don't say, what'd you bother showing up for? They say, you get a reward. There's a reward for walking. There's a reward for going. You don't get the reward for studying because you're not studying. But they don't say 0, waste of time, loser. They say there was something positive in that. So Sabra and Carol, on the same page, gave one understanding. Any other thoughts on why God would say there's some virtue here?
Could it also be an example to people who aren't going? They don't know that you're not studying when you're there, but they see you going. Maybe it would inspire them.
Oh, that's nice. In other words, Aaron's saying that you're not studying, and the people in the study hall know you're not studying, but the people that aren't in the study hall don't know you're not studying. So maybe the fact that people know you go, I mean, you go, oh, I go, yeah, I go every night. I go to the study hall, go study. Every morning I go to the study hall to go study. My lunch break, I go to the study hall to go study. That in itself could promote virtue because it's encouraging people to go study. They don't know you're not studying. So you being a good example, that in of itself could bring you reward. That in of itself could be something that God says, that's good. I have to say, that's good. I like that. Any other ideas? Any other thoughts on why this could be? Again, it's flawed. We're acknowledging it's flawed, but it's not a zero. Any other ideas why there could be merit in this? I think there are many ideas. I think what Carol Sarber said was good. I think what Aaron said was good. There's many, many ways you could understand this. It could be, hey, you're putting yourself in a good environment, and that's worthwhile, right? Like the study hall is the best environment. It's the environment where people are studying Torah. So even if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is studying, you're hanging out in the right place. You're hanging out with the right people. You're in the right vibe. You're putting yourself in the right environment. And that's very valuable. So going back to what Sabra said, and maybe eventually, I would agree with that, because if you put yourself in a good environment with good people doing the right thing, it does affect us. And affects us in both directions. And that's why, very interestingly, right, the second clause was a person that does study, but not in the study hall. He studies at home. He studies. And of course, he gets reward for studying, which is, of course, the main thing. But the sages say, but he doesn't get the reward for going because he doesn't go. And you could be like, well, how are you being so nitpicky here? Like, what do you mean he doesn't get the reward for going? Like, we have a complaint on him? He's studying. Who says he has to study hall? The sages are saying, no, there's a point of studying in a study hall. There's a point in putting yourself in an environment where you're with other people doing good things. And that environment helps you and picks you up and moves you to a place you wouldn't necessarily go to on your own. And I think that's a very valuable lesson. Of course, there are many other ways of understanding it. I'm just bringing out one here. That's a very valuable lesson to us, because also in our lives. Now, of course, sometimes, especially for Noahides, all your environments are virtual, but those are still environments. And some of you are blessed that you have communities, maybe you have other Noahides, maybe you have a Chabad house or something like that you can go to. You can say, what do I need it for? I'm a good person. I'm serving God. I have to go to that environment. Like, yeah, I mean, there are also other good people serving God, but I don't need that. And the sages are saying, no, you do. We're humans. We're social creatures. We're creatures that we do feed off other people. And if you put yourself in a group of other people doing the same thing you're doing, as Aaron said, you're aiding the group, you're supporting the group, your going is adding a weight and a power and goodness to the group. And your going is also helping you because you get affected by the group. You're gaining by being part of it. Just, I mean, like I'm even saying now, I'm thinking as we're in the class. Now, obviously, I'm not putting down anyone that watches the class on YouTube in their own time and can't make it the time of the class, which of course it's wonderful. Anyone that watches it any place. So anyone who's watching this on YouTube, this is not a put down. But for people that have the good fortune that they can attend the class, I think it's a much more impactful experience, including people that are quiet. You could say, well, of course, the people that talk and participate and answer and ask, well, of course, they're gaining. But I believe even people that aren't yet talking and participating, being within the class, they're within the group. Sabra said, you give yourself time and then gradually you get more comfortable opening your mouth from these virtual posts, and it just becomes more natural and it's easier. But even someone who's not talking, I think, I could be wrong, and maybe somebody watching on YouTube will say, absolutely not. It's the same experience. But is being part of a group. So going to the study hall and you're not learning, but you're putting yourself in the right group. You're not going out to the movies, you're not going to the bar, you're going to a study hall. You're being part of a good group. And there's virtue in that. And the person who's studying but doesn't go to the study hall to study, again, God's not taking away any virtue of his studying, but it's not the same as if he opened up the same books, but instead of doing it in his house, he does in the study hall. Now, again, this is not putting anyone down. Obviously, some people are in environments where there is no study hall, and some people have to be home and watch their children, so they can't go. This isn't a denigration of any person in terms of their own specific circumstance. But I think in these words, the sages are embedding lessons about how should we look at ourselves and our lives and things that help us get closer and closer to God. That was the 14th. If we go on.
May I say something about the
Sure.
second
Sure.
one? Sometimes that person can't go.
Absolutely. I said that.
Yeah. And with me, there is no other place in this town that I live. I'm in, but I have Sabra. I have here to come. I have Heimberg on Wednesday nights at Chabad of Montana. And so I take advantage of what I can go. But we have a lot of people, I think, who have a hard time navigating not having somebody around. And it's good to know we get credit for at least studying every day.
100%. And I did say that I think this
I know you
virtual
did.
room is definitely a room and definitely very, very, very supportive. And definitely I did say that some people, they have no options.
Yeah.
They have no options of studying besides alone. And God understands that. And it's not that the person who's studying alone because they have no other option is, being chastised. But
Right.
the sages are bringing out the point, which I think is a very valuable point, that if one had the option, and you could say, but what's the value? What's different? I study so well. I don't want to go there. It's noisy. It might distract me. And the sages are saying there's a value of being in a place with other good people doing this.
Yes.
And that has a value. And that was the point I was bringing out. And of course, I know, and I often think for the Noahide, a tremendous challenge is being alone. And thank God you're Noahides in the 21st century. And there's internet and there's virtual societies. And for many of you, like Carol is saying, not for all of you, obviously some of you, there are other Noahides around. And for some of you, you're connected to a Chabad house or a synagogue. And some of you have nothing where you are. And I happen to think it's a tremendous challenge to be alone. Now, God doesn't make mistakes. And obviously, each one of you is supposed to be a light to the world around you. And if you know you're the only Noahide around, make sure your light is shining because there's a lot of people that have to be warmed by your glow. But I think it's a challenge. Now, for Orthodox Jewry, we, as much as it's humanly possible, never really allow ourselves to have that challenge because it'd be incredibly difficult to be an Orthodox Jew without a society of other people around for the practical details of our life. And that's why Orthodox Jews always live near Orthodox Jews, the hubs of society there, because that's how our society functions. That's how our service of God functions with other people. And it's a tremendous support. And I remember when I first started this class, me and Danielle, many, many years ago, Danielle, I don't know if you remember when, I don't remember, it was a long time ago. But my feeling was erroneously, I feel bad for Noahides that they don't have these classes. I didn't know they have plenty of classes. And, they're so alone because that's a real challenge. I think that's a tremendous challenge that you really need other people. And many of you don't have them, but thank God you're Noahides in the 21st century. And we do have internet and we do have lots of classes for Noahides. And hopefully each class like this one, I feel this one becomes a little nucleus of people supporting each other on their journey. So even if you're physically alone, you're not alone because you have other people on the same journeying with you. Let's just go to number 16 in our 2 minutes. I don't know if I should try to move it in because we have exactly 2 minutes. So maybe let me ask instead. We went through a few ideas today, right? We went through Mishnah 10, 12, 13, and 14. We went through 4. So in 10, and we're just going to recap and ask you a question on it. In 10, we spoke about the character traits, the foolish person that thinks, what's mine is yours and yours is mine, as versus the perhaps Sodom-like person that says what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. That was Mishnah 10. Mishnah 12 was the students grasping, retaining, and even if you don't have either, work, your mind is a muscle. It will happen and will be very, very, very appreciated by God. 13, giving charity. Imagine someone that gives charity but doesn't want others to. Ego, creeping into something very good, or wants people to give but doesn't want to give. That par between vision and reality. And in 14, as we were saying, about going to the study hall and not studying, and why that's viewed in a limited way as something positive. Studying home and not going to the study hall, we appreciate the studying, but we wish you would go to the study hall. So from those 4 ideas, which we unpacked, and I think we sort of tried to make all of them relevant in our lives today, anyone has any of those that most struck them, most felt as something that was a lesson that was applicable, a thought that they hope they will retain and work with? Sabra?
I've been thinking about this as we've been talking about retention and what comes after retention, implementation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the goal.
Okay.
The goal is, but when we're talking about Torah study, okay, which is what we're talking about, the study, it's not mathematics or philosophy or science, history, it's Torah study. There's a goal in studying and retaining that does not even have to get to implementation, because Torah study means you're putting God in your brain. Torah is God's will and wisdom. So when you study Torah, you and God are one. And when you grasp that Torah, you're grasping that piece of God in your brain. And when you retain that Torah, you are retaining that piece of God in your brain. So you're walking around and maybe you're making supper or washing your dishes or shopping on Amazon, but a piece of your brain is holding God's will and wisdom. And that's why it's so valuable. Now, of course, we would like from grasping to retaining the implementation in terms of refinement of self or changing character traits or living more aligned with God's will. But that very fact of retaining, stop before we got to that next level, is a tremendous, tremendous godly gift.
And it's
Because
enough.
Even at there, that's enough, because we're holding literally, my physical brain is holding a piece of God's will and wisdom. And the more Torah we know, the more our brains are holding God's will and wisdom. That in of itself is wow. And then, of course, what's going to happen is because you're holding so much of God's will and wisdom in your brain, you change. Anyone
Thank
else?
you.
Mary?
For me, repetition is very important, to keep hearing it over and over, and also hear the interpretations of a teacher like you or your son, a rabbi, and all of that together, I think helps me more than just reading it myself.
I think that's true for most of us. In talking about going back to the idea of the Torah study and going to the study hall, so the sages always, always encourage that. They always encourage that one should not study alone, again, if that's possible. Because there's a certain, even like they say, if 2 people are studying, if you don't have a teacher, it's two people on pretty much equal level of Torah knowledge are studying, it's still compared to like 2 knives, rubbing against each other, and they become, of course, much sharper because they're rubbing against each other. Mm-hmm. There's definitely the interchange and the dialogue, and it becomes much more fleshed out in your mind. It becomes much more something of substance than if you just read this, even if everything I said was written here, I think for all of us, for most of us, I agree with you. I don't think it would have the same impact. I feel that. Anyone else?
I was going to say that I try and take away each week one thing at least that I will work on or dwell on or pray about each week. And that's why this has become so important for me.
That is
Because-
beautiful. I would tell that to my students who would complain about classes being meaningless. I would say, not per se my classes, I mean, just in general, I would say exactly what Carol said. I said, my challenge to you is from each class, which class is 45 minutes long, take one thing. And once you find one thing, you could space out and not listen to the rest of the class. But find one thing that's meaningful, because I do not believe that in 45 minutes, there's nothing meaningful there. Find one meaningful point and focus on that point. And that was a gain. So I think that's such a practical, great perspective, Carol, that you do that.
Thank
All
you.
right. Anyone else want to share something before we go?
Thank you so much. Excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad.